desperately need to get together and let our voices be heard.
This is Buffalo What's Next. I'm Jay Moran.
I'm Bridget Jaipal Valenza.
I'm Dave Debo.
And I'm Thomas O'Neill White.
After May 14th, how can we afford not to talk about race?
About education, about segregation, about humanity.
Since the dawn of this nation, racial violence has existed.
The way we have designed our society has a big hand in what occurred in that Tops Market.
The suburban area, everywhere. We must work and teach our children.
We need to make sure that we put more funding in our programs that help prevent gun violence and more money into art.
If we're going to have some real healing, we've got to have space to tell some uncomfortable truths.
This is Dave Debo. On the program today, we have discussion on a couple of different areas, all of them interesting and fascinating, though. Do stay with us. Coming up in just a little bit, Reverend Al and Vivian Robinson. During the blizzard, they opened the doors to their sanctuary and hosted about 150 people who would have otherwise been stranded in the snow. They'll talk a little bit about how the blizzard was managed coming up. Also, later in the program, Sara Sadri is here. She's an Iranian activist locally working on the rights of women. Anjali Preston will be here for that. But first, I did want to just take a moment to talk about something that happened yesterday that's pretty significant for the East Side. The proposed community benefit agreement for a new Buffalo Bills stadium was approved by the landlord agency of state government, and it includes at least $3 million a year for a range of needs. It'll be decided each year by some sort of oversight committee. A broad summary of the agreement was approved. It includes support for mental health and food insecurity, and even the need for some public art on the outside. It talks a little bit about a program to include people of color and low-income individuals and veterans and women, and even members of the LGBTQ community in the project. It includes job training. It includes a set-aside for hiring of minority and women-owned businesses, but also a set-aside after the fact to make sure that some of the purchases made by concessionaires in the stadium are dedicated to MWBEs. It includes support for the disabled. It includes a commitment to higher prevailing wages and a project labor agreement, and it includes even support for recycling programs. It includes a transportation component that would put a transportation hub at the stadium and try at least to extend more transportation options in there. The entire agreement is not being made public. A summary of it was voted on. And with that, let's go to Erie County Legislature Chair April Baskin briefing the media yesterday about everything that's in there.
Yeah, we are finally at a place where we have the bones of the CBA essentially nearly done. As I said in the meeting, we have outlined a very detailed summary. There are some nuances that are not included in it, but I think the biggest takeaways are we do have a historic CBA on our hands, and I commend the county executive and Governor Hochul for partnering with me and leading that charge with the Buffalo Bills, and I commend the Buffalo Bills for doing a good job with the philanthropic community giving that they already do and going above and beyond that. So we have outlined $3 million a year over the course of the lease, which essentially, when you include the CPI, will be more than $100 million in valued contributions to the community. We have a CVA. That's something that's a big deal. We've never had one in a Bills lease negotiation in history. We have community oversight of a CBA. So there will be 9 people appointed from the public to be able to serve with the Bills and make decisions on how that $3 million a year gets allocated across Erie County. And something that's very, very special to me was the caveat that is specific to minority and women inclusion post-stadium. We talk a lot about MWBE inclusion on construction, but that's not anything innovative. That's state and federally mandated. So this CBA goes above and beyond what is being required by us, and the Bills are committing to, after the stadium is done, when it comes to utilizing workforce and supplies, they have a percentage commitment to spend X amount of dollars of their revenue with minority and women suppliers. So I'm very proud. I don't think that there is a CBA in the nation that compares to what Buffalo and Erie County is getting. And I just can't commend my colleagues in the legislature, County Executive Polenkars and Governor Hochul, the Pagulas and the Buffalo Bills team for getting us here.
Is that what makes it historic?
It is historic, yes.
What makes it historic?
The things that I just outlined. One, it's historic for our region. We've never had one before. We have 100% community oversight. 9 people are going to be appointed from the general public to work with billionaires, essentially, on how they're going to spend their revenue in our community. We have a commitment above the traditional MWBE inclusion that is set by the federal government in the state. And after the stadium is done and people are going to games, there's still going to be an intentional percentage of revenue from the Buffalo Bills spent on supplies that come from businesses that are owned by women and minorities. So these are revolutionary things. And the dollar amount, $3 million a year of value. And some of that will be cash, some of that will be community investments, but all of it is going to be decided on by the CBOC, the Community Benefits Oversight Community. That community board will have the opportunity to review what the Buffalo Bills does with their philanthropic annual giving. And I think that's something that's very unique. I don't know any community oversight committee that works with their private NFL team and opening up their books and seeing how they're doing in terms of giving back to the community. So what we're doing here in Buffalo and Erie County is something that's revolutionary, and we should be very proud.
Is there something you wanted that you didn't get?
Yeah, a lot of things. But where we are, but I'm still proud. I mean, I would have asked for everything that Santa Claus could provide in the North Pole because I'm someone that is really committed to the community being the best that it can be. But we got very, very close. I would have liked to see some neighborhoods specified. We know the hardship that East Buffalo has faced in the last few years. We saw the disproportionate positive COVID cases at the top of 2020 in 14215 zip code. We saw the targeted mass shooting this past May, and the blizzard that just hit us all this Christmas. The deaths were disproportionately Black, 25 deaths Black, up nearly 50. So I would have liked to see the Black communities more or less specified in the CVA, but I can understand for legal reasons why that's not necessarily appropriate. But I do believe with having community oversight, I do believe with what we've already seen from the Buffalo Bills in terms of their attention to the Black community during hardship, that we're going to continue to see some reinvestment there. So we haven't lost anything at all.
That's Erie County Legislature Chair April Baskin briefing the media yesterday on the community benefit agreement reached at least at this level with the Stadium Landlord Corporation for the Buffalo Bills Stadium. More on that topic in the coming days, but in the meantime, stay with us. Thomas O'Neill White up after this.
Do you absolutely love Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, PBS NewsHour, great performances, and other amazing shows on WNED PBS? But you're not always in front of your TV when they're on. Don't miss them. You can stream the channel live wherever you are in Western New York by visiting WNED.org/live or use the WNED PBS app.
WNED PBS can go everywhere you go with the WNED PBS app. Go to the app to watch shows like Kleinhand's Gift to Buffalo, Frontline, and Compact Science. Even watch on the go with the WNED PBS live stream and a 24/7 stream of WNED PBS Kids. You can also see the full television schedule and what's on right now from the app. Download the WNED PBS app wherever you get your apps.
This is Buffalo What's Next, where we have conversations with the community about moving forward. To have your voice heard, press the Talk to Us button on the WBFO app, and we'll work to get your questions and comments on the air. Join us on Twitter @WBFO or email us at news@WBFO.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
You're listening to Buffalo What's Next. I'm host Thomas O'Neill White, and with me today to talk about the city of Buffalo's response to the blizzard, this latest blizzard, is Al and Vivian Robinson, pastors at Spirit of Truth Urban Ministry on Gold Street in the city of Buffalo. Al and Vivian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Can you tell us a little bit about your church for those who may not know about it?
We are a non-denominational church in the Lovejoy area. We love to put Jesus on blast. That's what we're known for.
That's our
just
motto,
putting Jesus on blast.
And your congregation is on Gold Street, obviously non-denominational. Just tell us about the neighborhood where you have your church.
Well, we're in the village of Lovejoy, and initially it was quite difficult in Lovejoy, but as you know, God puts us there with a purpose, and that's why we were there, and so we began to thrive. Lovejoy is now a beautiful neighborhood. It is very diverse. It is filled with lots of love, a lot of people. It's just it's a nice place to raise your family. I mean, it's a great city neighborhood.
When we get into this storm, I mean, you guys have made international news about your response sheltering over 100 people during the storm. Can you take us through what happened? You sent out a Facebook post just checking up on folks on Christmas Eve. Can you take us through what happened after that?
Well, yeah, so I sent that out in response to something that my wife has posted, and it got shared 1,700 times. We had lost power. So the neighborhood has just lost power, and my wife and I, we still had power, and we're looking at each other like, we're getting ready to have a Netflix weekend. It's Christmas weekend. We're going to just chill. We're going to, lay back and just enjoy, right? So we go shopping in the morning, something that I don't care to do too often, but we bought food for we had purchased food for the rest of the year, as we have we have quite a few kids and grandkids, and we expected to see them sometime during the holiday before the New Year's, and so we purchased enough food to last us through that.
Dutiful children, I must say.
So it was something my wife prompted me. She says, listen, everybody around us, they don't have electricity, and temperatures are starting to drop. And we didn't know that we were going to fall into what's called a bombogenesis, or a cyclone bomb that just pounded Buffalo. And so I look at my wife and I say, babe, I mean, why would the Lord let us have all this electricity and we're still got our heat, we got everything, and yet the neighborhood is like dead. I mean, there's no electricity anywhere. And she looked at us and she looked back at me, and she says, we're going to have to open the doors of the church. And so she posted it, and it was shared 1,700 times.
And then we got our first phone call. We had a family come in from Jamestown. She was pregnant, and she had her baby's father and a friend, and they were, you should see them, they were like in tears. And then after that, we had another gentleman come in. Then we had another family who was stuck, and she had just got off from work, and then she called her sister to come help, and they got stuck. And then the children, they were stuck, and then she had blisters on
it's like third-degree burns from the cold, the hypothermia.
And then we had a gentleman come in. I never seen ice frozen on someone's face. So after that, then you have people coming in that had 30 minutes to live because of their oxygen. They were on oxygen, and they only had 30 minutes to live. And the stories of these people coming in, it was like, became so emotional. Mm-hmm. We were in tears. They were in tears because they thought they were going to die.
And the first people to show up were a pregnant woman. A pregnant woman and her husband?
Yes.
I feel like I've heard that story somewhere before.
Yeah.
Seeking shelter?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, had you opened your church before during times of inclement weather?
No, we never did that. We was like basically sitting at home, like my husband said, just enjoying the night, about to watch Netflix. And then it was something in my spirit that said, open up these doors. And if we didn't open up these doors, we would have had all these bodies in our Lovejoy area.
Right. It would have been catastrophic, just catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had truck drivers coming in from Michigan, and people from getting off from work, they were stopped right where they were.
Right at North Ogden and William.
All up in that area.
Have the two of you lived in Western New York your whole life?
Yes. Born and raised.
Is this, and now I know you've got some stats, is this the worst storm you've ever seen?
Absolutely. This is I made it through blizzard of 77. And I was a young man at that time. That was fun, right? It was you didn't realize the death toll, but in the city of Buffalo, I believe that 29 people perished in the blizzard of '77. But apples to apples and oranges to oranges. This is the most catastrophic loss of life I have ever seen from a blizzard in the existence of the city of Buffalo. You just can't find any records that compare to the records. We sustained 70-mile-per-hour winds for over 37 hours. Comparatively to 77, that was just 16 hours. So this is something that wasn't just, stay home, it's going to be bad outside. This was a catastrophic storm that should have been conveyed with the urgency that you could lose your life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier you housed over 100 people in your church during the storm. Was it difficult to feed, to clothe, to provide essentials to them? How did that process work?
So what happened was when the people started coming in, you automatically are in a mode that these people need to be comforted. They needed blankets, they need sheets, they needed everything, and they needed medical attention as well. So with me owning a restaurant and coming from a big family, we know how to multiply. We know how to stretch food, and that's what we did. I went in the freezer. We started pulling everything out and stretching everything, and also in the process of that, making sure that people were comfortable. We were putting chairs together. People were laying on the floor and just making sure they were comfortable, making sure, we kept them alive. Because that was the whole thing, is every person that came in there thought they were going to die. So that's what's the main focus on that.
And you guys convened almost like search parties.
Yes.
To go out and find people in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. What did that look like?
Well, Vivian started receiving all these messages on her messenger about, listen, I'm stuck at 300 block of Gold Street. I'm stuck at the 400 block of Green or whatever. In Lovejoy. So we're a really tight-knit community. We know who's on what blocks. We have cameras all over the place. It's just a beautiful, tight-knit community that's in great development. So we know where who is, right? So, but when we were met with the blinding, absolutely blind, couldn't see past your nose. Felt like razors were just slicing across your face while that wind was swirling around. We put together a master list, and we started dispatching snowmobiles to those individuals to have them pulled back. Like she had just mentioned that an individual is running out of oxygen in his oxygen tank. We have a Facebook page, and we can kind of, link people to resources relatively quickly and get those resources to the church relatively quickly and feed people. You had just asked how we were able to do that. We ran out of food in 2 days. We just shot for the rest of the year. We have 8 kids. 9 children and 8 grandkids. So that's a lot of food, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of food.
We ran out of that food in no time. And, people were bringing food on sleds via snowmobile, and my wife in her magnificence was able to do triage, everything, it was 154 people.
154 people.
Yes.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Vivian?
So what happened was with the snowmobile people, they would have a dot. They would follow this dot because the visibility was so bad they had to use a dot on their phone as a locator.
You see that dot on the iPhone?
Yes.
Bill Kless and his team would take people to the dot, and they would just look at their phone because you couldn't see in front of your vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it described where the roads were, and it really worked out well. We were able to extract almost 60 people.
And he carried people home, that lady on your back.
I also carried a woman that is a cancer recovery survivor, and she lost the use of her legs, and I carried her 2.5 blocks back to the church.
Wow. So being on the front lines of saving people's lives, from being there in the middle of it, how do you feel about the city of Buffalo's storm management?
Well, there's always opportunity to do much better. People were told, and they understood. Let me rephrase that. People understood that there would be no emergency services at all. Right? That you are on your own right now. The storm is hit. You're on your own. Do not go out. Do not do this. But these people were already thinking that this is just another 4 feet of snow in Buffalo.
Right.
You know what
we're
I mean?
Buffalonians.
Yeah,
we can handle it.
They're thinking, it's
Piece
just
of
another.
cake.
Yeah, they had no idea of
severity.
first of all, it's a meteorological anomaly to have a bombogenesis occur in this area underneath the 49th parallel. It just doesn't occur. I mean, it's once in every generation. And so I don't think people understood just the magnitude of the catastrophic loss of life that could happen. And they just didn't. And I think that for starters, should have been conveyed. You can lose your life today if you go outside. You lose your life. And they give the warnings. He gave the warning on Monday. He gave the warning on Tuesday. But in my opinion, people just did not believe that they could lose their lives, and they lost their lives.
And then some people, they were at work. Target was open. Because I really believe that people didn't think that this storm, this blizzard, was going to be that severe. Because if they would have known, I don't think these stores would have been open, these liquor stores, a lot of these places wouldn't have been open, and the employers wouldn't have had these people come to work, because a lot of these people were working.
Mm-hmm. And so we've lost nurses. I mean, these are people that are out there giving their lives to save me and you, and these people's lives were lost, in the storm. I just, from the very beginning, there should have been something that would allow just common people to know that this is just not a regular, blizzard. This is a catastrophic Category 5 blizzard. I mean, there should have been. They should have been able to understand it at that level, and they just didn't. I didn't even understand it at that level. Like I said, my wife and I were going to hunker down, make it through the 4 feet of snow like we always have in the past, and keep it moving.
You're listening to Buffalo What's Next. Thomas O'Neill White here with Spirit of Truth Urban Ministry
in Lovejoy.
in Lovejoy, yes. Pastors Al and Vivian Robinson. Do you think it's with the city and the county, they should have maybe a week ahead been like, hey, this storm is coming, really enforced this is a once in a generation type of storm, close things down the Thursday before the storm was going to hit, everybody get home do your shopping and all that stuff before noon, stay in your houses. Do you think the city and the county could have done a better job with that?
I absolutely believe that if there's a driving ban, is a driving ban. Don't drive, don't get caught on the roads, and employers and manufacturers, everybody should have known that there was a driving ban and not one tire should be rolling on those streets. Right. But the driving ban was not enforced. It was not enforced. Even the National Guard would be driving with people driving on the streets. And it was a debacle. I mean, don't drive means don't drive.
The 33, like that, the older lady just was going out to do their annual Christmas event. She died.
She had no idea. If these people had known that this could have taken their lives from them, they would have never ventured out there. They would have never gone to work in their scrubs, hopped in their car, and then gone home in their scrubs. They would have never done these things. Right. They just did. It wasn't conveyed in a way that would make a person believe that they could die. And then it was reactive, right? You bring in 465 pieces of equipment after you realize how difficult it's about to be. Buffalo has great resources. I really think that those resources could have been better spent in letting people know that they should not be out there, period. And, National Grid, they're saying that, there were iced up power stations, right? They didn't even know that it was about to be a catastrophic storm like this, and so now their power goes down, which then causes all these people to die and freeze to death in their homes, where there is just no heat. These guys are using their gas stoves to heat their houses. There is no other method to heat your house other than a gas stove. And so there's a lot of disagreements that we have. I mean, these are 19th century homes. Buffalo's got the oldest home stock in the nation, and it's hemorrhaging energy. And honestly, just there's so much more that could just be done better.
And then we have 4 warming centers.
Yes,
4.
Mm-hmm. One was a Hennepin Center in Lovejoy, and it went down, lost electricity.
Okay. I want to circle back to that in just a little bit. The next thing I wanted to ask you, though, what does the word sanctuary mean to you, and has it taken on a different meaning after what went on in the storm?
So a sanctuary to me is a place for people like you and me that are looking at an imminent danger to go to avert or avoid that imminent danger to a safe place. We want to be safe, act safe, and be safe in a safe place, right? Sanctuary now, when I'm going to get on the radio and tell everybody, listen, no emergency services. I've just alerted every thug, savage, and person out there that they can break in and just rob and do whatever they want and run the streets. They were breaking into to Aaron's rental store. I mean, stealing TVs. How's that a life-saving measure? You're not saving anyone's life. I mean, I get someone taking some formula.
Oh yeah, of course. Taking the essentials.
Right.
Understandable.
I get it. I mean, people's lives are on the line. I get that. But running down the street with a mattress or running down the street with some TVs and that, I mean, that was just a debacle.
And it wasn't their sanctuary.
And so they're thinking, hey, you know what? Well, all these law-abiding people are going and doing this. It's our chance to get out here and do this, and that's what happened.
And Vivian, what does sanctuary mean to you?
That's basically the same thing my husband is saying. And I remember back in the days, it was a song, "Make Me a Sanctuary." That's how I'm looking at it, because we were that sanctuary for those people.
Mm-hmm.
We were that sanctuary. We opened up our homes and we opened up this sanctuary so these people can have peace, they can have joy, they can be comforted, and they can know that this is a place that they can be loved on.
I was on an Anchor Zoom meeting on storm response a few weeks ago, and the wonderful Denise Barr brought up an interesting suggestion: neighborhood hubs, where people can go before a bad weather event, where there's food, there's clothing, there's shelter, so emergency services aren't stretched thin, running across the city to save people. The two of you basically created one yourself in your neighborhood. But what if there was one for every neighborhood in the city?
It would be amazing, because these people would have had, like I call it, a sanctuary. They would have had an outlet as well for themselves. Because I look back at that one person that was on
Kensington and Bailey.
Clinton, on Clinton, how she was in her car, not realizing that there's a fire station right up the street from where she was located. There's a church at that corner as well. That, there is places she could have gone to if she would have known that as well. So I feel that there should be an outlet for people to go to, not only for, but many.
Right.
Because people are saying, well, you were the only church that was available. We have people in our neighborhood that has keys. So if we didn't live in the neighborhood, they would still have access to the building to let people in. I think that more people should have access to their community as well, to be able to.
But isn't that what a community church is? I mean, aren't we the face and hands of God? I mean, aren't we the ones that are supposed to be there and be available in a time of catastrophic loss of life? I mean, so we get trained, right? I'm a New York State chaplain with the Chaplains Task Force, and we're trained via FEMA on how to respond to these things. And that training came in very handy, right? My wife went right to it. I went right to it. We just went on auto mode. But a church should be the place whereby people can go to be saved. I mean, we're a hospital for sin sick people or people that are just out there in a bad way. We have to open our doors, and it's normal for a church to be there and available when you have a catastrophe like this. This wasn't anything that was, outrageous or, oh my God, let's open up the churches, the last defense. This is the first defense. A church is supposed to be in their community to help that community grow and to help that community through all circumstances.
We've got about 3 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you both something I ask every guest that I have, and it's very broad, but what does Buffalo need? Not just in terms of storm management, but overall, as community leaders, as religious leaders in your community. What would you say to that?
I don't think that Buffalo should be as separate and cliquish as it is right now. You know, it's extremely cliquish. Like, you go to that neighborhood, you go to this neighborhood. You know, God put us in a neighborhood that, you know, honestly just didn't want us there. I mean, let's just call it for a spade for a spade. And only God can do what he did in this neighborhood. The neighborhood is absolutely beautiful. It is filled with Bengalis and all kinds. On Christmas morning, we woke up to 6 nationalities, and my wife had all this ethnic food to be made. And it was just beautiful. It was just absolutely gorgeous. Buffalo needs to be less cliquish, more love, more good neighbors, and actually not have people knocking on your door and you turning them away because they're freezing to death.
Right.
And this blizzard was a great example
Yes.
of Buffalo being the city of good neighbors.
That's right.
Vivian, what
Yes.
does Buffalo need?
Buffalo needs more love. They need more people to come together and be more doers. You know, because one of the things people were saying, well, I couldn't get out, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, but you could have made a phone call. You know, I think communication is the key. Keep communicating, keep showing love, and keep believing that we are Buffalo strong.
We are.
Because when you look at the front page of that Challenger, it should have been more faces on the front page of that Challenger to indicate that more people came together to build up and to save these people.
You're listening to Buffalo What's Next. I'm Thomas O'Neill White, talking about the blizzard and the heroic response by Al and Vivian Robinson of Spirit of Truth Urban Ministry. Al and Vivian, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Coming up next, Angeli Preston talks women's rights in Iran with activist Sara Sadri. You are listening to WBFO News.
Hey, have you seen WNED PBS's Compact Science or Shakespeare's Greatest Hits? Here's 5 reasons to check them out. Compact Science is so fun, high energy, and educational that it won 3 prestigious awards: a Communicator Award, a Telly, and an award from the New York State Broadcasters Association. And Shakespeare's Greatest Hits also received a Communicator Award and a Telly for cinematically portraying some of Shakespeare's best monologues in bite-sized videos. Check them out at WNED.org or on YouTube.
Watch the WNED PBS original production, The Adirondacks.
We've come closer here to a working balance between the natural world and the human world than just about any place on Earth.
The Adirondacks, now streaming on YouTube and the PBS video app.
Do you absolutely love Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, PBS NewsHour, great performances, and other amazing shows on WNED PBS, but you're not always in front of your TV when they're on? Don't miss them. You can stream the channel live wherever you are in Western New York by visiting WNED.org/live or use the WNED PBS app.
This is Buffalo What's Next, where we have conversations with the community about moving forward. To have your voice heard, press the Talk to Us button on the WBFO app, and we'll work to get your questions and comments on the air. Join us on Twitter at WBFO or email us at news@WBFO.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Buffalo What's Next. I'm Angeli Preston, and today's guest is Sara Sadri. Sara Sadri was born and raised in Iran and now resides in Buffalo. She received her degree in biomedical engineering from the University at Buffalo and is currently working as an engineer. She is an activist fighting for women's rights in Iran with the Women Life Freedom Movement. Hi, Sara. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm good. Thank you. Let's talk about Women Life Freedom. What is that?
So this is basically started as a movement in Iran, started as, so with all happening with women's being as a second class in Iran and getting harassed and over their mandatory hijab in Iran, and a girl named Mahsa Amini, 22 years old, died by modality police. And this movement started over that and still happening. And now it's getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, men and women now are together fighting for revolution. And this going to be the first revolution happening as a feminist movement. I feel we're very proud of that. And if you are a feminist, if you are fighting for human right, animal right, I feel like we should support this movement, and hopefully we'll see that day coming soon.
The Islamic Republic regime, they came into power in Iran in 1979, and they are still currently in power today. Talk about the treatment of women in Iran. You were born in Iran and you grew up in Iran. So talk about that.
I moved to US when I was 17. I've been going back. Obviously, I really wanted to go back like next summer, but with all these things happening, I don't think it's happening. But obviously, we always been treated as a second class. Always in school, they told us you have to wear hijab, not have your hair out, long dress, your nails, the way you look, not be able to even wax your hair, like the hair on your face. I mean, these things can very distribute you and damage you as a woman, that you cannot even look the way you want and always have to cover yourself. So, I mean, it's hard to be looked as a second class all the time. And there's always a voice hit in your face, like on your head, that hey, cover your face for me. If a guy see you, then it's your own fault if anything happens to you, and all of that.
What are some of the things that women do here in the States freely that women cannot do in Iran?
It's unbelievable, but it can be very simple things, such as riding a bicycle, going out with a man who is not your fiance or your husband. If the modality police stop you and ask you questions, if it's gonna be like, oh, just my boyfriend or my guy friend, you can be in trouble. They can take you. Or the fact that you cannot get out of the country without having a signature of your husband or your father. You don't have the right to divorce. I mean, all those things. And 90% of the women in Iran are educated in science, and they cannot have a basic human right as a woman, can really affect your life. I mean, you don't have any right to do anything most of the times. There's always have to be a man with you to approve what you're doing, what you're not doing, the way you're looking.
What about applying for a passport?
Yeah, that too. You need a signature. Like, I had to have a paper that's signed by my father if I want to apply for my passport, if I'm getting out of the country, everything. Yeah.
Are you afraid, or has it ever crossed your mind? Because when we think about repressive governments like the Islamic Republic regime, they get compared to the Taliban in Afghanistan, and we've heard several stories about how oppressive they are towards women in that country. Are you afraid that if the revolution is not successful, that Iran could become more oppressed like Afghanistan?
Yeah, it could be, but at the same time, I don't want to say that this revolution is not going to happen, because people are very clear about that. The actions are amazing. People in Iran or out of Iran, we all want this revolution to happen. And if it's not happening this year, it's happening next year. I don't want to even think that Iran one day would be like Afghanistan. And I think we've been very successful with every point or anything that we wanted to happen. Yeah, hopefully we'll see the revolution happen soon.
And do you have family in Iran still?
I do. I do have my uncles, my grandparents. They're all still in Iran. And I know they go out. They've been loud. They go to all the protests have been happening. I mean, I'm very worried about them all the time. It's hard to see your families out there, and obviously with if you follow the news of Iran, you see how harsh the mandatory police is, how the Sepah and Basij been acting with all these protests, raping girls, killing people, hitting them, and all of those. It's pretty scary, especially like when I see my cousins that are girls, they go out. Like, I always think, I'm like, what's gonna happen if they take them away? Like, you don't know what's gonna happen to them. That's the worst thing. And with all these executions happening, it's pretty scary. But obviously, we know that the network and the internet has been down. I barely talk to my family, or whenever we're talking, it's just like, hey, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? And it just goes by that.
The internet being down, is the internet controlled by the government there?
Yes.
So they're intentionally keeping the internet down to prevent what's going on in Iran from getting out to the world, and preventing people like you here in the States from communicating with families still in Iran?
Yes. So obviously, like, we cannot talk to our family. So the rest of the world and social media, they cannot see or hear what is happening in Iran. And also, I believe if you bring the internet down to a certain level, like if your phone is showing 3G or 2G, they can hear your communication, and they can access to your personal, like, texting. So the internet has been into some certain level, and they can only like, you can only have a phone call with some specific apps, which people were afraid of using those. So yeah, I think those are the main reasons of internet and network being shut down.
Do you know how the current environment is there now in Iran? Have you spoken to anyone recently?
I have not. I just had like a phone, like a 10 minutes FaceTime with my grandparents. Obviously, it's been very bad. With all the videos I've been seeing, is just unbelievable. Like, just like, sometimes, I am born and raised there. I know what is happening there. But I feel like at this point, when I see it, it's just like so hard to believe. I'm like, so how can I show that to my non-Iranian friends, that this is what is happening, how this is how environment is?
I want to take it back to when we met in person a few months ago, and you told a story about harassment that you faced walking down the street. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah. Well, I was 12 years old. I was going to my grandfather house to study. I remember it was my final time, and someone harassed me from the back. And first, you're, as a 12-year-old, like, you cannot think straight to see what is happening to you and what is that, like. So it was like a big shock to me that time. And when you're younger, it's just like, it's, instead of like solving the problem, you just like try to ignore it. So that, all of that came up, and obviously now that I'm getting older, I'm just seeing how damaging that is for a girl, and for the whole, like, the society is like the girls in that age. And obviously, I not wearing any makeup or my hair out, a long dress. I remember exactly, I was wearing a black shawl and a black long dress, black pants, and I just had my backpack with my books. So it was not anything like looking any way that it would look attractive. So yeah, it doesn't matter with mandatory forced hijab or not. When there's a sick person out there, it can damage you. So that's the thing. I'm like, mandatory hijab is not fixing anything. It's just making everything worse. And women don't want that anymore. Even men, they don't want that anymore. It's a force of how you look like, how you live. I feel like it's just damaging no matter what.
What do your relatives who remember how Iran was prior to 1979, what do they remember about life in Iran before the Islamic Republic regime took over?
Obviously, first I want to start with actually my grandparents from my mom's side. My grandfather was in jail for 7 years, and he was actually about to get executed because he was fighting against Islamic regime. So he was taken away. My grandmother didn't taken away and didn't go to jail only because my mom and my uncle were so young. I don't, they never really told me exactly how old, but I'm assuming they were young enough for them to not to take my grandma away. So it's like it was a very dark moment for them. They don't really talk about it, but obviously it was anything that it was better than what we have with Islamic regime, and people back in time they were not appreciating it enough. And actually I believe it was a couple weeks ago when my mom and my grandma they were talking, my grandma mentioned that they chose for the king, the Shah of Iran, to go away, and they chose Islamic regime with closed eyes. And I remember how mad I got because I straight up told them, I'm like, you guys destroyed more than 2 generations just because you chose Islamic regime with a closed eyes because of how it's like how busy it was back in the time in the street, and how people just got hyped up over something that they didn't think straight. And I'm not saying that, I mean, from the books I've been reading and all of that, I'm pretty sure before Islamic regime there was some other kind of problems. I'm not saying it was perfect, but whatever it was better than what we have right now with Islamic regime. Yeah, they have their own problems. I'm not saying having a king is good, just one person choosing for a whole country, but whatever it was, I'm sure it was better than what we have right now. And people, even their generation, are saying how sorry they are for choosing with closed eyes and doing this to our generation. And I always tell them, I'm like, you guys are the one you guys have to stood up, have to be on our side, have to fight as well. I don't want to be like, oh, I mean, I'm old now. I'm done with that. No, you have to fight. You have to come stand outside by my side. You have to fight for the next generation. Like, it's your fault for this happening. So yeah.
When your grandfather was arrested and he spent 7 years in prison and he was going to be executed by the regime, what happened that he ended up being released from jail and not executed? Because we hear that people and children are being killed by the regime, and people are being killed in Iran for standing up against the regime. Why was his situation different?
I am not exactly sure of why, but I'm just gonna call him lucky. But when he always he doesn't really talk about it with me, and I feel like they really didn't want it to talk about it because obviously these things can be very dangerous in Iran. But I just want to say he got lucky, and maybe because my mom and my uncle, they were very young, and dad helped him. But I mean, 7 years in prison for just being disagree with Islamic regime. Like, my mom has no memory of her dad when she was young, or how my uncle, even he still has that he gets very sick when something stressful comes up, and he gets rash over his face. So I mean, that all started since they took his dad away. Yeah, it just damaged the whole family basically.
Your mom not having any memories of her father, is this the grandfather we're speaking of now, or is this somebody?
Yeah, that's my grandfather.
But she's in contact with him, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're in contact, but I mean, she has no memory of when she was young for all those years, and they have to move around. Like, for a while, they had to move out of Tehran moved to Esfahan, another city in Iran, to just work, and it was like cheaper to live there.
Let's talk about women. Let's get back to women life freedom. This movement that's happening now, it's led by young people like yourself. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my generation don't take an answer as a no anymore, because we have social media. We see how it is living in Europe, in Canada, in America. They want that freedom. They are so educated now. They when they see that, they want that too. I mean, why would you live in a country that, oh, when you're going out, make sure your hijab is like your hair is covered, make sure you're wearing hijab. They don't want that anymore. And the economy is just so bad that there's nothing for you to do. When I actually went back to Iran last summer, and I was talking to my cousin, and she was like, it's just so bad. Everything is getting expensive day by day that my generation, even if they want to save up to have a car, have a house, or anything, they cannot afford that. They cannot buy that. So she was like, I have no hope for my future. There's no hope that I can start anything. I can have anything. I don't have any of that. Like, what kind of lifestyle is this? We're just living daily by daily and just breathing, and maybe sometime we go out for a coffee. Like, no, we don't want that anymore. We want to live. We deserve to live. But we want our freedom back. And I think that's how it started, and that's how angry my generation is now. And they will fight till they get it, and they're still fighting. And honestly, I'm just like so proud of whoever is still goes out there and fights. And honestly, it's been very emotional time for the past 3 and 4 months for us who just watch the videos, and we're trying to do anything that we can out of Iran. I know it's just like a tiny steps, or obviously it's not as dangerous of what they're doing out there, because they can die any minute. They can just get taken away any minute.
We have a Iranian American community here in Western New York. It's not as large as Toronto, Ontario, our neighbors in Canada, but you guys are here. So what has the Iranian American community done locally to spread the word about, what's going on in Iran, and what can non-Iranians like myself do to spread the word and to help the people of Iran?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this interview, what you're doing right now, means a lot. And what I've been trying to do, because obviously Buffalo, New York is just a very small town, and the Persian community is just like very small. So all I can do is go with educational wise, teach my non-Persian, non-Iranian friends what has been happening, what we want, what is our goals here, and tell them what's the truth. Because sometimes I can see in the news, like New York Times, the what they post for the news about Iran is just not correct. It's a lie, because I know they work with NIAC, which is the community they have. The Islamic regime has that community out of Iran. So what I can tell them what's the truth, what I want, what's been happening. I mean, so far we've been very successful, and I do have a couple of my other friends that you interviewed. We are trying to do anything that we can, and try to get people like you and other news channels that they're willing to work with us, and they're willing to be our voice in any way.
What has been the response from elected officials, both on the local level and the federal level?
So we did have a couple interviews, and try to get like in a meeting with them. Unfortunately, the responses haven't been very clear with on US wise overall. So I feel like Persian, like Iranian community out of Iran, they try to start with Canada, which I mean, you know how big the community is over there. So I feel like they have more power over there. So I feel like we're putting our focus first on Canada or Europe or Australia. And so when we get all of that and we're clear, and then we can work on US. But I mean, the community in San Diego or DC, every weekend they've been like in front of the White House. They've been pretty clear, and they want US to be not on Islamic regime side, and be the Iranian voice, the people's voice. So yeah, I mean, we've been having I had a couple of interviews, I mean, with you, with Channel 2. I wish there was more. We've been having different events which you joined. We will definitely have more events coming up.
What can elected officials do, or what should they be doing to support the Iranian people?
So all we want is for US government to kick out the diplomats and Islamic regime kids, because we don't think that they do deserve to be living freely in US, with especially because they come over here with people's money, and they come here, they live here, and I don't think that's right. So we want them to send these people back, or just take their citizenship away, or ban their money, ban their accounts. So yeah, that's the only goal, and that's what we want. And we've been in Europe Parliament, they voted for putting Islamic regime as a terrorist. So I mean, I'm really hoping that would happen in Canada and the US as well.
Is there anything else that you want to let our audience know about the activism that you do, the country that you were born in, that you were raised in, the people in Iran? Is there anything that you want us to know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're a feminist, if you are inside of human rights, animal rights, I want you to be on Iranian women's side. I want you to fight for them. I want you to be their voice out here. Do anything that anything that you know, just spread the word. And if you think the Islamic regime is what Iran is, that's a lie. That's not what the truth of Iran is. And I cannot wait for Iran to be open for everyone. Iran is just such a beautiful country with so much history, so much background, such a rich culture. And I'm just sad that I cannot, my friends cannot see that. My non-Iranian friends cannot go back. And I mean, half of my family, they're Baha'i, and the Baha'is in Iran, obviously the rest of so Baha'i community and the rest of the religious that they're active in Iran, they cannot be as active that they should be, as freely as they have the right to be. And my family been living in the US for the past 60 years, and they never seen Iran. My cousins, they would love to go back, and they cannot because of the religious. And obviously, I'm so sad about that. I always tell them, I'm like, one day we'll go back there together with whoever, with the way we are, however we want it to be, with what we believe in, what we don't believe in. And I cannot wait for that to happen.
Sara Sadri, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Charles. You are tuning